And I had such a great benefit from that because I never really talked about my experiences to anybody. I never really talked about the trauma that I saw. You know, I've experienced, my best friend was killed in action. I was in Fallujah in Iraq in 2004 and witnessed a lot of atrocities and war. And I just kind of bottled all those things up internally, never really expressed how I felt about any of those things. Writing became such a therapeutic art for me personally. I actually ended up writing my own book. And it was such an incredible cathartic experience that I just couldn't get enough of writing and would advocate for all these writing programs for veterans that were out there. And what I discovered personally was that through writing, I felt more and more comfortable expressing my emotions, expressing experiences that I went through, and I found it easier to communicate what I went through the art of writing. And because of that, it helped me open up more and more and speak to other veterans and encourage them to do the same thing. And so I went on to co-found a nonprofit called Veterans in Film and Television, where we organize military veterans that work in the entertainment industry. And the reason why we did that, well, many reasons, but one of the big reasons is there's a lot of programs out there in the arts, whether it's writing, music, filmmaking, which we're going to talk about. But all those programs, it's hard to find out about them unless you bring everybody together in one place and communicate them to everybody. And so we did that, and next thing you know, veterans are participating in all kinds of programs, starting their own programs, and it's kind of been this snowball effect ever since. So the reason why I'm saying all these things is because if you have a veteran in your family or in your life, and they're having a tough time expressing themselves to you, to your family members, to friends, please encourage them to find out about an arts program, because maybe they feel more comfortable communicating what they're going through visual arts, performing arts, or writing or whatnot. So that's why I'm communicating all this to you all. I'm trying to give you the tools that you need to communicate with veterans in your life who might be having a tough time expressing what they've gone through. And, you know, hopefully they can start on a path of therapy at that point. So with that being said, I'm gonna let Christine talk about one of the many programs in the County of Los Angeles that is having a great impact on the veteran space. So go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. I actually started Awaken Arts because I'm a rape survivor myself, and dealing with my rape trauma, the thing that I did was I'm a writer as well, and I'm also a dancer. And I saw this moment in time where I realized, the at-risk youth that we work with, they don't necessarily have the space to speak or share their story through different art forms because the arts were getting taken away. They can't get out their aggression because there's no more physical education. There's just, different things were, they were being robbed of. And I was like, what if I created a space where that existed? And I had an opportunity to work with this school called Sunburst Youth Academy, which is run by the National Guard. And so we do this program with at-risk youth, and the veterans that actually run that program and work with the kids are like, Christine, why can't we do this program, And I thought about my brother, who's also a veteran, and I said, okay, let's try to get into this space. And so I reached out to the Long Beach VA because I had a few connections in there. It took me a year and a half to get, even the opportunity to do something like this with the veterans. And I did it with a small group. I think there was 6 of you guys. John was one of the first guinea pigs, and he is now the director. And so my vision for this program, as I did the research, you look at veterans coming back and transitioning back into our society. They do so much better when they are in a position to serve and help others, because that's in their mindset to do, is to help, to go into the front lines and help each other. And so my vision for this program is not for it to be run by me or other artists, but to be run by veterans. Not all of the program, helpers are veterans, but we are run completely by John and Mike. And he's not just a mentor, he's a lot more than that now, even though he doesn't want to admit it. But I think that, growing this program and seeing them grow and how they just transitioned the program that I created for at-risk youth into something that is really for the veterans that they serve has been just so amazing. And I've just helped empower them and grow in their leadership and change the program to what suits their needs. And I'm just so excited to see that.
And John, do you mind talking about how you got into the program, what intrigued you about it, and how you felt you had growth because of it?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been doing art since I was a kid, and having that, I went through childhood traumas of sexual abuse, along with domestic violence issues along with my mom and a stepfather, and dealing with that and using art, and then joining the military, and having that opportunity to continue to do art while I was and then I served in Iraq in 2007, saw some atrocities there. Not to just kind of glaze over it, but I mean, you see what you see, and you there's no coming back normal from it. And when I came home, I was drinking heavily, to the point where nobody within my circle of friends or family was knowing that I was drinking by myself in my room. Got to a point where I was able to get to a moment of sobriety, and decided to take that moment to really step into becoming sober. At that same time, I had found out about Awaken Arts at the VA in Long Beach through one of our counselors, a mutual counselor of Mike and ours, who really put that effort forth and saying, hey, you like painting, you like doing all this, let me put you in a program. Let me put you in something that's going to help you grow. Because I can see already within yourself that you want to get out of that old life and get into something new and get into something that's going to grow you more. And through that, we've gone for about 5 years now. We counted by how old my daughter is, because my wife was pregnant at the time, and that was 5 years ago. So, but from there, we've gone and we've been able to reach hundreds, if not thousands, of veterans through using art. Myself, I'm a fine artist. I paint, I draw. Either with anything from aerosols to acrylics, oils, whatever the medium is, I'll try it.
So John, I just want to touch on, I'm glad that you mentioned your spouse and your daughter,
Yeah.
right? Because mental health just doesn't affect the individual, it affects the family, the community. It's really a community issue, right? Not just personal issues. And so can you just touch, if you don't mind, can you touch on how your issues maybe had an effect on your family and how the growth through the program helped with that?
Yeah, definitely. I was diagnosed in 2010 with PTSD because of violent outbursts and what have you. And I was just dating my wife then. And she saw me go from mood swings to just the crap I brought home. And having to deal with that and being like, oh, hold on, this shouldn't be normal, but this is what my life is like. And so having her and like, hey, you need help too. And having my mom, having friends that have turned around and said, hey, it's time to get help. And it's really time you need to take control of what you have, and turn it and make it work to a positive manner. So that's what my wife and that community, that small community of friends and family, that's what they did for me.
So would you say that because of their recommendation saying for you to go seek out some kind of treatment, would you say that them doing that really kind of helped you towards that path?
Yeah, that definitely kicked me in the rear to get in there.
Right.
So
I'm glad you're saying that, because for all of you that are participating, again, if you have a family member or whatnot, just please don't be afraid to speak up or talk to them or encourage someone to go seek some kind of treatment. And moving down, John, when did you find out about the I'm sorry, Mike. This is John right here. Mike. Mike is a fellow Marine. We actually served in Iraq relatively around the same time. We just found this out, by the way. And talk to us about your pathway towards growth and getting involved with the program.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. I did 3 tours in Iraq as an infantryman. I got blown up 3 times in IEDs and 1 time by an RPG. The 3rd time coming back from Iraq was a little different for me. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. drank a lot because I thought that was the answer. I mentally broke down like completely, and I had no idea what to do. I went to the VA hospital, talked about the resources that were there, and one of them was Awaken Arts. It was called Creative Expressions at the time, and I saw John in the photo, and he's drawing these pictures and whatnot. And my case manager at the time kind of force fed it to me. It was like every time he saw me, you should try this, you should try this. And it was a great tool because I had quit drinking. Alcoholism ran like rapid in my family, and I didn't want to be the same as the rest of them. So I needed a different outlet, different vehicle for my hate and discontent and things that were wrong with me. My anxiety goes from 0 to 100, and it may take hours for it to go down to 75% for it to be manageable. But I found this program, and at first it took me a while for it to like dig its teeth into me, and through repetition and muscle memory, it kind of forced me to open up. PTSD is stigmatized these days, and it was hard at first to admit that I had it. And
were you experiencing this on your own? I mean, did you have any? Does your family, were they aware of anything you were going through at this point?
My wife kind of had, my girlfriend at the time, kind of had an idea, but she didn't understand the completeness of it, like the whole picture, until she started going to classes for it too.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that. So just so you know, family members can go to mental health treatment with veterans, right? So veterans can go alone, but they can also bring a spouse, a child, a parents, or any kind of support network that they want, so that they could better understand the veteran in their household, right? Is that right? Yeah. And how would you say she benefited from going with you?
Oh yeah, completely. She knows how to handle me more, handle my bad, my downs, so to speak. She's able to sense it and then point me in the right direction to better it.
And so, talk about your participation in the arts program. What specifically drew you to it?
Okay, so I do. I like painting. I'm a painter. I do backgrounds mostly. I love like scenery, pop art. I love cartoons, that kind of thing. But I am like the bulldog of the organization at the hospital. I take our vets that have any problems, I mean anything, I take them right to where they go and make sure that they get the proper treatment that they're looking for. That most of the time you're pushed away because you don't have the right piece of paperwork or you went to the wrong building. I don't take no. I say, okay, well, bring me to this right place, and so to speak. So
great. Yeah, of course.
So that was part of another component of this program that I wanted to create, is that these guys fight for each other's rights and fight for the services that already exist in the VA. And so being in a community with each other and painting and doing something like that people would normally think like, why are you painting with these guys? Is to start these conversations. Like one of the things that he was able to access was book rehab, which is that, he got access to school things, and it was through conversations with other veterans in these art classes that he was able to find out about the services that exist for them. And so it's not just about the arts and the healing process of it. It's about the camaraderie and the band of brothers that they have that is created from being in the same room with each other. So that's a great thing.
That's great. Yeah, and also it just takes communicating.
Yeah.
Just saying something, just asking questions, talking, and also being knowledgeable about a program that might be out there. So now you're all armed with at least one great program that you can recommend to a veteran in your life. if you feel you need to. Elliot, I'd like to talk about your background. What did you do in the Marine Corps, Elliot?
So I was in the infantry. I was a rifleman.
And also, I just want to add, not everyone in the military is hardcore like these gentlemen right here. They're all infantrymen. They're on the front lines, but we have intelligence, drone operators, people in the rear supporting everyone on the front lines, but that doesn't mean that they all don't experience some kind of traumatic events during their military experience as well. So Elliot, take us through how you found music, right? And how music has been a great outlet for you.
So I've been doing music since I was a kid. When I was in 5th grade, I started playing drums. And then in high school, I transitioned from being a drummer to a musician or to a singer. And then I joined the Marine Corps pretty much right after high school. I was 5 days out of high school graduation, and I was on the Yellow Footprints becoming a Marine. Went to Iraq, Ramadi, Iraq in 2005. Got out of the Marine Corps in 2008, and then immediately started experiencing symptoms of severe PTSD, depression, anxiety, hyper-awareness, and I was in school at the time, so I was in college, and I wanted to go to college because I was trying to figure out, what do I do with my life? I don't really know. I just got out of the Marine Corps. I was in the grunt, or I was in the infantry. I don't know what to do, so I was like, let me go to school, see if that'll help. So I was in school and I was doing music at the same time, and it wasn't working. I couldn't focus in classes. My anxiety was through the roof. I couldn't take tests. I was failing this class, failing that class. So I dropped out of school and I started getting counseling through the VA at a vet center in Corona, California, out here. And the counselor that I had was really good at her job. And she was like, let me know what your symptoms are. So I listed my symptoms for her. And she said, okay, I'm going to explain to you why you're doing each one of these things. And then along with that, she started making suggestions about how I could deal with each symptom that I had. One of the most powerful suggestions that she made was, you said you do music, right? And I was like, yeah, I've been singing since I was in high school. She's like, why don't you use music as a form of therapy? Because I had never thought of music as a form of therapy until this happened. And so I was like, you know what, that actually might be right. And she was like, yeah, you get an adrenaline rush when you perform on stage. You can express yourself through songwriting. And I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. So I took that advice and I ran with it. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So ever since about 2013, I've been doing music, and my debut album is going to come out this year. Last year, I released a song, thank you. Last year was the first time that I was ever actually able to talk about my military experiences with PTSD in my music, because for a while I was going through a transition of trying to figure out myself, trying to get the counseling, trying to get the help. And then in 2008, I didn't mention I was actually homeless, which is how I ended up in that situation, going to the VA. So 2013 comes around, I go through the counseling, I start doing music. Last year, I finally was able to create a song that I call Gunshots, which is about being a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of you may know, some veterans will come home and will experience hyper-awareness, and with hyper-awareness comes, let's say hypothetically you're in a grocery store and there's a veteran and there's a family with a kid has a balloon. The balloon accidentally pops. That popping of the balloon reminds that veteran of being in a firefight, takes him back to being in combat. So you might see a veteran in that situation duck behind grocery counters. He's, in your mind, freaking out. He's having an episode. So that's what Gunshots is about, the song that I wrote that came out last year. I don't know if any of you were here earlier today when I performed, but I actually performed that song. And that song is near and dear to my heart because that actually was me. I was in a grocery store and a kid with a balloon, a young boy with a balloon, and his family, I don't know if they were at a graduation, what they were at, they had celebration balloons. Somehow one of the balloons got popped. That immediately took me back to being in a firefight in Ramadi. And I ducked behind the tomato counter. And people were looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with that guy? Who is that guy? Why is he freaking out? It's just a kid that popped the balloon. And to me, I was in the middle of a firefight, and I had no idea because that sound literally took me back, and it was like having a living dream. And so being able to put that song together and actually get that off my chest and tell that story through music and a music video that came with it was extremely therapeutic to me. And throughout this entire process, music has been an extremely therapeutic form of expression. It's been able to get a lot of things off my chest when I perform on stage. I call every performance that I do my mini therapy session. My album is going to be called Therapy Session. I'm actually a member of the company that Mike co-founded, VFT, Veterans in Film and Television, which is now Veterans in Media and Entertainment, which is actually how I got here today. They've gotten me a lot of gigs for music. And so music has been able to literally save my life.
That's an incredible story. Now, he said some key things that I want to circle back on. One was you mentioned you were homeless at one point. Is that right?
Yeah, I was homeless in 2008. Yeah.
And how long were you homeless for?
I was actually living at Villages of Cabrillo for a year, so from 2008 to 2009.
Okay, so I'm glad that you said that. I'm not glad that you're homeless, but I want to touch on that for a second. And the reason why is because a lot of people aren't aware of this, but Los Angeles County has the highest population of veterans than any other county in the country. That we just do. And more veterans move to this city than any other city in the country, okay? And so as a result, there's a lot of great resources out there for veterans, but there's also big issues going on in the community, such as homeless. We have the highest homeless veteran population. But the reason why I want to talk about it just real quickly is because there's a stigma and a stereotype to homeless veterans, that they're alcoholics, drug addicts, that they're on the streets begging for money, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, there's certainly a component of that that's involved in the community. But at the same time, there's a lot of homeless veterans that are living in their cars, that just don't have a roof over their head. And they're still students, right? And they're going to the gyms to shower up. And you would have no idea that that veteran is homeless because they look squared away. They just do. But internally, they're not winning the battle inside, and it's causing all these external issues in their life, and you would have no idea. And so I'm just bringing that up because not every veteran out there who is homeless is that homeless veteran that's out on the street, which we're, of course, we're trying to help, but they're also veterans that are in these halfway homes, that are in these transitional homes. And I just want you to be aware of that. They just, a lot of us are one paycheck away sometimes from being out there. And so it's just not as easy sometimes for veterans who go through this traumatic experience, this really impactful experience in the military, and then they come home and they're trying to transition. It can be very overwhelming. And would you say you experienced some of that with the veterans?
Yes, we actually had a veteran named Jeff, and he was one of the first illustrators of the military. He was hired on as an illustrator, and he would take the bus from wherever he was at to make sure that he was there every Friday. I think he only missed like one. I think he did 2 sessions, and we try to, we helped set him up to get, you can get a phone through the VA, and just through the program, we were able to help him access some of the things that he had no idea existed. And I think that, having programs like ours, it really gets them into the rooms and getting access to those programs that are specifically for homeless veterans. And it is, and Jeff was totally, you would never think that he was homeless. He just looked like he was a guy with a backpack just cruising around Los Angeles. And, and he would draw in his spare time. He would, sit in the park and draw. And so I think, like what you said, nobody would even know that he was homeless if you went and you talked to him.
Sure. A good friend of mine was homeless at one point.